for all the honeys I ain't sexing, cause I'm here fighting you!
Man, y'all remember the crazy amount of hype this game had prior to release? I ain't never seen no shit like it. I remember watching a channel called G4 back in the day, and a month prior to release, there was a whole countdown timer to the release of this game that played during the side of every show. Motherfuckers didn't just want this game, motherfuckers needed this game. I knew people that held off buying a 360 until this game came out. And let me tell you, man, I was one of them bitches. Holiday season 07. I'll never forget it. I was like, Mom, please, I need a 360. And she was like, you want a 360? Well, I better see all A's and B's on your report card. Once I see that, then we can talk. After she said that, you best believe I was locked in that semester. She kept up her deal of the bargain, and from there my childhood was forever heightened. I'm only going to be talking about the campaign here for the same reasons stated in the previous Halo videos, but man, I can't stress how much the online of this game slapped. The addicting PvP with the infected modes, all the fan created stuff in the Forge, co-op going up to 4 players. Man, I wouldn't be surprised if this game was consistently one of the most played online games of its era, because it seemed like everyone I knew that had a 360 had this in rotation. It was like this, Modern Warfare, and GTA 4 for like a solid 3 years. Man, good times. Unlike Halo 2, the development for this one seemed to be pretty smooth sailing. Both critically and commercially, this game seemed like a victory lap for not just Bungie, but for Microsoft. At this point in time in the console wars, they were kicking Sony's ass, and this game elevated that ass kicking even more. But how does the campaign hold up today? Is it really ass peak as millennials say, or is it just rose-tinted glasses?
Lord Hood, we made it.
Music to my ears, Commander. What about the Ark?
Fully uncovered, sir.
And we don't have much time. Marines, the Prophet of Truth doesn't know it yet, but he's about to get kicked right off his throne. You will take our city back and drive our enemy into the graves they've been so happily digging. One final effort is all that remains.
So Halo 3 takes place sometime after the second game, where Master Chief boarded the ship off High Charity, leaving Cortana behind. Well, that ship eventually crashed on Earth, and after some searching, the Chief is found by both Sergeant Johnson and the Arbiter. After a brief death scare, it's back to business as usual, blasting through the Covenant, except this time, the elites have seceded and are on the side of the UNSC now. The Prophet of Truth is still out and about, and that wrinkly fuck plans on activating something called the Ark, which will then activate all Halo rings throughout the galaxies. And considering what one can do, yeah, several would probably mean the end of, well, everything. Obviously the Chief isn't having that, and so for the rest of the game, both him and the Arbiter chase him through the galaxy to stop both him and the Flood, who have gotten noticeably worse.
See how they bait their trap? I will help you spring it.
New console, new look, similar vibes. Man, I forgot how much of a jump in graphical fidelity the 7th gen was from the 6th gen. Compared to Halo 2, this game looks leagues better. The detail in the environments and character models has increased tenfold. Characters no longer have mashed potato face and move very naturally while they speak. Enemies have even more unique animations. Animations are a lot smoother. Environments, especially these foresty levels, are looking lush. And we actually have some good ass lighting. Hell yeah, no more soupy look. In fact, this game looks shiny as hell, man. Everything from the Chief's suit to the weapon, vehicles, and architecture have this pristine glow that's really appealing to look at. Along with the already sick designs of all that I've mentioned, this was no doubt one of the cleanest looking games of its era. And what complements that are the grandest levels in the series yet. Wide ass arenas that give you plenty of angles to approach encounters, and some of the most epic looking backdrops that make you feel small. Yeah, nah, even as a kid, I noticed that this game was in a different league with how polished it was. In an era where games were going more brown and gray, this game is a lot more vibrant than I remember. Other FPS games were starting to catch up in terms of being cinematic, but this game was still leading the charge on that front. There's some really cool looking shots in this that have been ingrained in my mind. And the music, whoo! Feel like a broken record at this point, but the music elevates so many of these moments. Still the same ominous sounding orchestra. The difference with this game is that there was a bit more thought on where certain tracks were placed. The triumphant sounding tracks are only saved for the epic moments, and the cold ambient tracks are saved for the unsettling scenes. Sounds like pointless praise, but in the previous two games, Halo 1 especially, they would just cycle through a bunch of tracks in places where they didn't fit.
Sir, new contact slipping in.
What is it? More brutes?
Worse.
So Halo 1 introduced the whole template of the series, and Halo 2 refined some things while adding dual wielding. What does Halo 3 bring to the table? Well, Halo 3 chooses to further refine what made the first two games special while expanding on the player's arsenal by a lot. No substituting weapons for other weapons here, hell nah. Aside from the brute plasma rifle and the Halo 1 Magnum, everything's on the table here. Which means that out of the three games, this one has the most options in terms of approaching gunfights. As far as some new stuff that's pretty dope, the brutes finally got their own pea shooter in the Spiker, which wrecks, some more grenade types, ripping off turrets, the glorious fuck you beam that is the Spartan laser, and another melee weapon that's one of the funnest things in any FPS game. Hell yeah, the gravity hammer makes you feel like a boss. Even more so than the energy sword. This thing just deletes whatever's in front of you. It sounds powerful, it looks powerful, and it feels powerful. Sucks that this game is so stingy on giving it to you though. You get this way less than the energy sword in the last game. It's probably not to have the player plow through so many of these fights so easily. I get that, but only getting the Spartan laser during this beginning part in the Covenant mission is insulting. Despite the limited shine of many of these toys, they are very much welcomed. Don't think it's enough to change the minds of those not fucking with the gameplay loop of the previous games though, and that's because this game fundamentally feels the same. I'm sure there's some underlying mechanical tweaks here where the combat here isn't exactly like Halo 2, but I couldn't tell you where. The same satisfying loop of shoot grenade melee is back, and it's still as addicting as ever. With all the new toys you can play with, you can already argue that this is the best rendition yet, since you could do a lot more, but it isn't that clear cut. The biggest difference with Halo 3 is that you're not fighting the elites anymore. Instead, the brutes have taken their place fully with some new armor. I fuck with the brutes as enemies, but they've never been as compelling to fight against as the elites. As their name suggests, they're just big dumb brutes, so they don't really fight you with much tact. It's mostly just them going berserk after you get their health low enough. I like that they do have their own personalities and equipment separate from the elites, but the elites did more with their constant movement and sense of survival. Still, this is only a minor gripe, as I do think that Halo 3 has the best campaign out of the original trilogy, and that mostly comes down to its pacing. This game is brisk, only 9 missions, and it's all killer, no filler. Yes, that even includes the infamous Cortana mission that traumatized many kids, including myself. Unlike its predecessors, there's not a single mission here that I felt like skipping. No particular mission lingers here, and that's because this game always knows when to switch up its setting and the type of scenario it throws at you. Take a mission like the Covenant, for example. Probably the funnest mission in the game. This mission is all about getting to the Prophet of Truth and killing him before he can activate the Ark. Before you can reach him though, you have to deactivate this big ass barrier blocking your way to the tower that he's in. And to do that, you need to hit the switches in the 3 towers surrounding it. In the previous games, this would probably be like standard corridor shooting against elites while going back and forth between all the towers on foot. There wouldn't be anything wrong with this, as Halo's combat is fun enough on its own. However, this game makes things just a little bit more interesting. You enter the mission trying out the most destructive UNSC weapon, you get a Warthog and do some vehicle combat on the way over to the first tower, you got some standard corridor shooting inside the tower, and then it climaxes with a claustrophobic fight between a bunch of tough brutes. With the other towers, you'd think it'll be rinse and repeat, but nah. You get into some aerial combat trying out the new Hornet vehicle. The second tower you don't even go to with the Arbiter having that shit on lock. And the third tower unexpectedly has the Flood popping in. And just when you think that the path to the Prophet will be a straight shot of more corridor fights, you get to fuck around with the Scorpion, followed up with a fight with not just one, but 2 scarabs at once. And then for the first time in the series, you actually get to work with the Flood, followed by a tense escape sequence with these assholes betraying you. This is all in one mission. Granted, it is the finale to the Covenant as a threat in the saga, but still, this type of pacing is applicable to most of the other missions too. And it's also a lot of subtle improvements in many things that just makes every moment of this campaign more enjoyable. There's actually spectacle now with actual battles with scarabs. There's all types of cool vehicles you can fuck around with in these wide open spaces. Every mission has a vastly different location that has each mission feeling distinct. And the Flood have actual variety in their encounters with all these different variants they can turn into. Reason why the 2 Flood missions in this game are the best in the trilogy by far. The Flood are finally an interesting threat. Still not as fun to fight against as the Covenant, but not the repetitive hordes like they were in the Halos 1 and 2. They are still a major pain in the ass though on harder difficulties. The only thing that's more annoying throughout this campaign are the constant interruptions by Cortana. I understand why they're here. Cortana was both the player and the Chief's companions throughout the first 2 games that added a bit of levity to what was going on. These are supposed to remind you of both her absence while also getting you to worry about what the fuck is happening to her back in High Charity. Works the first couple of times, but then it keeps happening and it loses its impact fast. At least they're placed in spots where there's downtime, but there's still unskippable cutscenes, which sucks on replays. Also one of the reasons why the Cortana mission is so hit or miss. In terms of atmosphere, it's the best in the game. You're back at High Charity, and it's shocking how much the Flood has spread here. All the walls are covered in flesh, and there's no life other than the affected, and these motherfuckers seem to spawn from everywhere. You never feel safe in this mission, and on top of that, you got the Gravemind's deep voiced ass talking a whole lot of shit in your ear while progressively getting angrier throughout the mission. But it's here where the miss comes in, because you're not only interrupted by that asshole every hallway, but Cortana as well, and it makes this one of the most annoying missions to replay when you already know the story. Speaking of which,
Ghost is history. Oh, you need to do that like all the time.
Tank beats Ghost. Tank beats Hunter. Tank beats everything. Oh man, I can do this all day.
man, they went all in on making this feel like the finale of the series. We know that was never going to happen with the amount of money the series was raking in, but still, the stakes are at their highest with the good guys on their last stand, beloved characters are getting murked, and there's so many epic moments involving the Chief and the Arbiter. No more switching back and forth between the two, nah. Chief is firmly the hero in this romp, with the Arbiter being his zero, and it's just really dope seeing these two opposing badasses you played in the previous games team up. Fucking Godzilla and King Kong type shit. This game does wrap up a lot of things built up in the previous games in an emotionally strong way, but logically, how we got to some of these moments did not make sense. Really felt like Bungie was reaching for a lot of the emotional moments during the back half here, like the death of both Miranda Keyes and Sergeant Johnson. The former has always irritated me. So get this right. Sergeant Johnson has been captured by the Prophet, and they're all up in the same tower I was talking about earlier. The place is packed to the brim with brutes, so you would think an assault on this place would involve the Chief, along with a bunch of other Marines, right?
Nope.
This chick crashes a Pelican through the front window and goes in alone with a shotgun. What the fuck? What makes this worse is the fact that Master Chief and the Arbiter are literally right outside making their way in when this happens. She knows their position. You're telling me she couldn't wait a couple of minutes to storm in there together with them? It's not even the case of Miranda being a dumb character. Nah, throughout the series, she's been pretty stoic and tactical, so this is just Bungie reaching for her death. Sergeant Johnson going out the way he did isn't as arbitrary, but it's still a bit out of nowhere. Like, it feels like he's here just to die. It's not like the Chief or Arbiter couldn't activate this shit by themselves, but, you know, he is a hard-headed soldier that's pissed about his comrade's death, so I'm willing to excuse his presence here being because of that. I do understand that the Chief is a really stoic character that gets the job done, but it is a little weird that there's no reaction whatsoever from him when it comes to these Cortana transmissions. I'm not saying that he has to be in despair or anything, but not one emotional response. Like the previous games, it's more about the vibes and the actual narrative beats. The reason you feel something during scenes like these is because the presentation is so strong. The cinematics are the prettiest they've ever been with some really cool shots, the epic music provides that gravitas, and the voice acting is still A1. Bringing things back full circle with a crazy warthog ride like in the first game hits differently when you play these games in a row. Despite my gripes, I'm not going to act like this wasn't a satisfying conclusion to the trilogy for me.
But you did it. Truth and the Covenant, the Flood. It's finished.
It's finished.
I'll drop a beacon, but it'll be a while before anyone finds us. Years, even. I'll miss you.
Wake me when you need me.
So yeah, that's Halo 3. Best game in the original trilogy and one of the best games of all time. What makes it special probably won't shine as much these days, but man, back in 07, this was head and shoulders above so much shit. With this being one of my personal favorite games, I thought getting my thoughts out would be easy, but nah, it ended up being the complete opposite. It's like I've played through this game so many times and I'm so familiar with it that taking a step back and thinking about it critically feels weird as hell. Hopefully this video ended up being somewhat insightful. Nonetheless, this game is a classic and it's still pretty damn good a decade and a half later. Anyway, that's all I gotta say about this. Do the usual thing to help this video out in the algorithm, and I'll see y'all next time.